Welcome back to the second part of the pre-Calc 4.2 and Trig 1.2 video. In the previous video we were talking about how to find the exact sine or cosine values of angles that were on the unit circle. This next example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some angles that aren't necessarily on the unit circle, but we're going to figure out ways that we can use the unit circle to give exact value answers. And that's one of the things that I want to stress when we do these, is that I don't want you to just type these into your calculator, because if you type them into the calculator, you're not going to get the square root of 2 over 2 or the square root of 3 over 2. You're going to get decimals. And when we do these and I ask you to find exact values, I want you to use these numbers from the unit circle. So if I want you to find the sine of 5 pi, well, there is no 5 pi on my unit circle, but I do know that coterminal angles lie in the same position on the unit circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm either going to add or subtract 2 pi to my problem to get to a number that is on the unit circle. So if I take away 2 pi, I'm choosing to subtract because I know 5 pi is bigger than all of the angles that are here. So I've got to make it smaller till I can get to an angle that's on the unit circle. 3 pi is not on the unit circle either, so we might have to subtract twice. Now I'm left with pi when I do that. And notice that pi is on the unit circle. So what I can really say is that the sine of 5 pi will be exactly the same as the sine of pi. And what we know about the unit circle is that, remember, this is an x comma y. It also can be written as a cosine comma sine. So in this problem, the sine value is the y value, which is 0. So my answer is actually 0. Now I could very easily just type in sine of 5 pi in the calculator and get 0, but I want you to do this using the unit circle, because had it been an answer where it was, square root of 3 over 2, your calculator is not going to give you that. It's going to give you the decimal equivalents. So all you have to do is find the coterminal angle that is on here. So if I think about finding the sine of negative 7 pi over 2, again, that's not an angle that's on the unit circle, so since it's smaller, I'm going to choose to add 2 pi to this. So when I add 2 pi to this, I end up with a half. Negative 7 halves plus 2 is 1/2 pi, and the way we write that is really pi over 2. So what I can say really is that the sine of negative 7 pi over 2 should be exactly the same as the sine of pi over 2. So if we go to our unit circle, we find pi over 2. The sine value would be the y value. So therefore we can say that the answer to this would be 1. Again, I want you to use the unit circle to find your answers, because if I asked you to find the sine of 45 degrees and you type it in the calculator, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get square root of 2 over 2. You're going to get a value that is not on the unit circle. Let's talk next about using the calculator to help us find the sines, cosines, tangents, and the reciprocal identities. There is a sine, cosine, and tangent button, or there are those 3 different buttons on your calculator. And then there is not a button at all for the reciprocal of the sine. So there is no cosecant button, there is no cotangent button, and there is no secant button. So we're going to talk about how we deal with that. But first, before we get to that, let's look at this example. If I wanted you to use your calculator to find the sine of 2. Now 2 is not is not on the unit circle. It does not have a degree sign with it, so that means that my calculator needs to be in radian mode. And that's going to be a lot of times what your mistake is, so I want you to check to make sure your calculator is in radian mode. And the way that you do that is you'll hit your mode button, and then you will look to see whether the word radian or degree is highlighted. Since we're dealing with radians, we want to make sure we highlight radians, and then we get out of the mode feature of our calculator. And if you're not sure how to change your calculator, see me in class and I'll show you how to change your calculator to the correct mode. So once our calculator is in radian mode, what we're going to do is I want you to take the time to push in the sign of 2, and please do this in your calculator because I want to make sure that you know how to use your calculator correctly. If you got 0.909, you did it correctly. If you ended up getting if you got 0.035, that's because your calculator was in degree mode. So you found the sign of 2 degrees. So it's going to be really important that you make sure, obviously you're going to get different answers depending on what mode your calculator is in. I didn't want it in degrees because there's no degree sign here, that's radian mode. Okay, so let's think about another one now. I had mentioned before that cotangent is not on my calculator. And the way that I will work with this is, number one, since this is radians, I make sure my calculator is in radian mode. Then what I'm going to do to get the answer for the cotangent is I actually type in the tangent of 2 pi over 3. So make sure you insert parentheses around 2 pi over 3. Then what you're looking for is this x raised to the negative 1 button. You are not looking for the tangent raised to the negative 1. That's not what we're looking for. That's the inverse of the tangent. I want the reciprocal of the tangent. So I type in the tangent because that's its reciprocal identity. And then I hit this x raised to the negative 1 button in my calculator. Okay, so I'm looking for that reciprocal button. So take the time to type this into your calculator. Again, make sure your calculator is in radian mode. Use the pi button, don't use 3.14. And when you do this, you should end up with negative 0.577. So if you type this into the calculator correctly, then you should get this right answer. So again, my screen on my calculator looks like this. Tangent 2 pi divided by 3, and then I've got this little -1 button. This -1 button, the actual button on your calculator has the x raised to the negative 1. That's the button you're looking for to get that. Again, you're not hitting the tangent inverse button. Again, if you're not getting this in on your calculator, see me and we'll discuss how to use your calculator to find the cotangent, the secant, and the cosecant identities. You really have to use the tangent of whatever the angle is and then raise it to the negative 1. You'd have to use, for secant, you'd have to use the cosine of whatever the angle is of something and then raise that to the negative 1. And then you'd have to do sine for the cosecant of some angle. Again, you're going to be putting some number in there, so maybe we'll just say pi. And then, again, you raise that to the negative 1, which would be taking the reciprocal of it.